Now, John, tell me, because I lose my screen too, you remember.
We should be live now.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us today for Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Mick Haley, Bob Bertucci, and Brian Gimolero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. Our weekly news show has leaders in our sport provide their perspective on the questions that are asked, along with the discussion on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us. Our news flash. Athletes Unlimited Women's Professional Volleyball at Fair Park Coliseum in Dallas, Texas will conclude their 5th week professional league. Check their final schedules at www.auprosports.com. AVCA will be hosting the D2 Volleyball National Championships in Dallas, Texas, April 14th to 17th. D3 Women's Invitational Tournament, April 9th and 10th, and Small College Beach Championships, April 16th to 18th. For more details and teams attending, check avca.org. We'll be updating you weekly on AVCA events. Want to make a difference? Please remember to renew your AVCA membership. This one organization that represents all coaches at all levels when lobbying for changes that are needed in our sport. You can make a difference by registering at avca.org. Today, our guests will provide some insight into their conference and their teams and what challenges they've had this fall and how they were able to utilize their experiences as a springboard to prepare for the D1 championships in Omaha next month. So let's head over to Austin, Texas with former Olympic coach Mick Haley, who will introduce our guest today. Mick?
Well, thanks, Ruth, and really exciting today to have two of the top flying coaches here in the country in collegiate women's volleyball. Our guests today are Jen Greeny, the Washington State head coach, who is now in first place in the Pac-12 conference, and Jen Flynn Oldenburg, head coach at Ohio State University, and her team is one game out of first place in the Big Ten conference. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
I'd like to start out by exploring what looks like possibly a trend that is developing in collegiate women's volleyball. Both of you were outstanding athletes at the present schools you're coaching at. It seems like schools have been looking at outstanding players who have gone on in the coaching ranks and have been trying to bring them back to their universities. In many cases, this is shown to be very successful. You two are the prominent ones right now. But in returning, how tough has it been to return, and what has allowed each of you to get your teams to the top two in the competitive conferences that you're in, two of the most competitive conferences, I might add, the Big Ten and the Big 12. So let me start with Jen Greeny, because you've done this a little bit longer. So Jen, jump in here and tell us what this is like. And if you have any pros and cons in doing this, or what's been difficult things for both of you to work through, share with us, because this is pretty interesting, and it's certainly exciting to see you come back and perform like you did as athletes, only in the coaching ranks.
Well, thanks, Mick. First of all, it was 10 years yesterday that I was hired back at Washington State. So yes, it's been a little longer than Jen's 1 year back. You know, she won't have the stories that I have, the gray hair, the wrinkles. You know, when I took over, the team was 0-10, or excuse me, 0-18 in the Pac-10 at the time. The team had a 1.96 GPA, which don't really know how you do that, but we had a lot of work to do. So, you know, I think just returning to Washington State and rebuilding the program that I think, I have so much pride in. It's just really special. And then to get it back to the level that we are right now, took a really long time and a lot of hard work. So there are definitely pros and cons in that. I'm happy that Jen is a little bit ahead of the curve for that one. But, I think returning to somewhere that you played is really special and important. And actually our whole staff are Washington State graduates. So I think when you're recruiting, it just adds a little special touch to it as well. I'm sure Jen would agree with that as well, but I won't take up too much of that time because that 10 years, there's a lot of stories in there. So go for it, Jen.
Yeah. My stories quite a bit different. I walked into a new arena with a team that had a bunch of talent on it. And it was just, can you get them fighting for the same cause? And I think as an alum, that's an easy one to sell to your own team that's on campus. I walked in your shoes. I wore the scarlet and the gray, and this is how we did it. And so it was, taking what they know as their current, Buckeyes, and what I did under Jim Stone and blending those two together to create our new path. And so, a blend of the old, bunch of the new, and I mean, like everybody else, this is a roller coaster, and you just hang on tight and close your eyes and hope for the best. And here we are, and we're competing at a high level because they're doing it the right way. They're playing volleyball the right way and playing together.
Pretty outstanding. So anything weird about walking back into the university and going into the offices, only now it's your office, you're not just visiting, you don't say hi to the receptionist, you don't call people by names. There's got to be people there that were there when you were there. How does that work and how does that feel?
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I think for me, it's an advantage. You step into a place that you already know where everything is on campus. A lot of these new coaches that have since been hired, come to me for, where do you take people to dinner? Where do you go on a campus tour? Nobody had to tell me any of that. I already knew where everything was. I mean, I think stepping into that situation has huge advantages that you don't have to learn the history of the program or the alumni, you immediately have a great following of fans and alumni and supporters. So I think for sure that's a huge advantage. And, like Jen said, we've been in that exact same situation. And I think it's easier to relate to our players that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the tradition of the program is a big one, and knowing that and not having to learn it and study it and, rehash it, like you were in it. And that even the time in between taking over this program, the players that I didn't coach against when I was in another Big Ten school, they still have a connection with me because they remember me from an alumni weekend. So I think that just bridges a big gap. I think what I had to learn was all the new stuff on campus. I mean, this place has exploded and the town has exploded. So, as things start to open up in the summer, and I'll be able to explore Columbus as an adult, which is kind of exciting. But in terms of what do I need to know? I have a great director of ops that knows every restaurant and every new place to eat. And so, that part's easy as well. But yeah, it's been great.
So real quick, a third question. I don't usually take this much time, but you guys really
Sure.
No, don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Yeah, we
We all
better.
know
We
that's a
better.
lie. We all know.
come on, man. Oh, no, okay. So do your teammates call you up and offer suggestions and that sort of thing? Because, when you played there, you were real tight with your teammates. So real quick, Jen Oldenburg, why don't you tell us about your teammates, and then Jen Greeny, you jump in.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, there's this Marco Polo app and it's like a video messaging kind of thing. And so I get recaps of the game live not live, it's after, it's post-match, and they're like, run the middles, another miss serve, and I just get all this commentary, and it's like I relive the match each night. But it's so great because they're so invested. They know the current team without meeting them in person, and they're just so involved because here's an alum, here's their teammate, running the show. So it's been really cool to see that. But yes, they offer a lot. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good.
And Jen, Greeny, you were at least a two-sport athlete at Washington State. You kick tail in a lot of different ways. Do you get all that feedback from both teams?
A little bit. I mean, we definitely have some big volleyball fans from our basketball team as well, from when I played. But yeah, kind of the same thing. But I think Jen probably gave them that Marco Polo idea, so I feel like that's coming towards me. But yeah, these thanks. Oh, there's the dog. These former teammates are the first ones to text after a match, and yeah, not as much feedback. So I feel like I might be getting some of that now.
Okay. All right. Well, Bob, jump in here.
Sure. It's actually very interesting to hear, the answers to some of Mick's questions for you guys, because I think this is really an interesting trend that could be really, really good for the sport. You go to the AVCA convention, you see all these young women that, a few years ago were out there playing, and they're kind of, you're obviously getting involved into the coaching, realm, and to think that they're going back to their schools and hearing you guys talk about how you the learning curve is much, much quicker. It seems like and it makes a lot of sense. And, men's volleyball is exploding right now. So there's plenty of places for the men to go coach. So I think it's great, that the women are, coming back to their alma maters and getting involved. But my questions really have a little bit more to do with, what's happening with you right now in the conference. We get near the end of the conference play right now, just a couple of weekends away. What's the highlights, the low points, the high points? Jen Flynn, why don't you try first?
I think the high points for us right now is just understanding the process, and understanding a new coaching staff, the way we teach, the way we're instructing. We spent a lot of the shutdown working on our scouting reports. How do we talk the game? How do we scout opponents? And using that time to dive into those teams that finished, above us or below us last year or in 2019, in order to make those jumps. And so seeing that translate onto the court with that verbiage and the way we're talking with each other and to each other, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm excited about. Yes, the wins, of course, wins are fun. Like that's all good, but it's the process to those wins that, as we're saying, like, here's how we're gonna play volleyball. Here's how we're gonna play at that level. And then on the court, they're saying those things that we're saying in practice. To me, that's just awesome that connection is there, that trust is there. And so I think building the trust has been a highlight. The low points, I think all the changes, and how do you deal with them? And every day is something new. There's a new protocol you got to follow, and all the adjustments that come from that. The daily testing, like that's certainly getting old, but I think all that stuff are the low points, but how you respond to them, that's a big thing that we're talking about. How to respond to things you don't like. You're going to complain about it, or you're going to move on. And, we're really pushing to move on and control what we can control.
Jen?
Yeah, we are 88% underclassmen on this team at Washington State. And so I think the high point for us was actually having, as bad as it sounds, having our fall season actually canceled, because we were able to train, 6 freshmen and get the team just better. Even though we weren't able to do a lot of things, we were able to do a lot of small group work early. And I think that extra time will be so beneficial to this group of freshmen, and just this group of young players as well. We only have one senior, and she's going to return next year. So I think that's kind of a highlight for us, is the future looks really good. I am in day 10 of my low point as I am sitting here at my house in quarantine. Mick scheduled this before the coronavirus hit our team really hard, and we had to cancel our match with Washington. And we've had actually 7 positives in 7 days. Wow. And so this is definitely the low point, but like Jen said, there's really not a whole lot we can do about it. And just what are we doing mentality wise to just get ourselves back on the court in order to hopefully get a match in this weekend with Utah, and then finish strong with Arizona next week, and hopefully look to the tournament. But no, I don't think any team wants this, but we want to keep each other safe and our community safe. So this is what we're doing.
Well, the high point might be now you've gotten through 7 of them. You probably don't have to worry. At least you can be able to put a team
Yes,
out
knock
there.
on wood, all of you, please. Yes.
Well, looking at the conference, I mean, you guys are, both of you are still, on the top of the conference. All right, you're battling away. What does the conference look like? Before we get into the whole national scene, let's talk a little bit more about the conference. And, you're not playing every team that you need to play. How are they going to determine who's the winner of the conference? And, how fair is it going to be? And what's the coaches talking about in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I don't, it's certainly not fair. And I think it's going to be really, really difficult for, the committee to be able to choose teams, especially with only 48 teams that get to go this year. I think that's really tough. So I'm on our regional committee, and, every other week we're just trying to grind it out, but it's really hard when we have matches canceled, and, we haven't been able to reschedule anything really. And, that we don't get to play everybody. And so we were really looking forward to playing Washington and Utah, 2 of the top teams in our conference, just to see where we are, really. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. And I know we won't be able to play Washington, which just stinks. But yeah, I don't envy any of these administrators, having to pick this tournament field. And I know the Big Ten is a little bit in that same situation.
So are you working on percentage? Win percentage is determining, or is it just matches?
Yeah, for the Pac-12, we are win percentage, but you cannot have played less than 3 than the conference average, is my understanding.
Okay. And Jen Flynn,
So,
how's
high level math.
Bring on the boilers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're similar. To be honest, we haven't talked about percentage. Like, it seems like something we should have. I don't know that anybody anticipated what this was going to be. Like even football in the Big Ten, it's like, okay, here's what it is. And then once you're in it, all these other factors come into play that you're like, oh, we never thought about X, Y, and Z to really come up with a way to determine the champion. So we had more if people were tied, but that's complete record ties. And so now we're dealing with different matches, different win percentages. Wisconsin's undefeated. If they go undefeated, they win it, which makes sense. But what happens if they have 1 loss, we have 1 loss? And we're like, maybe we win because we have more matches. Like we're still not sure. And again, I think at the beginning of it, we were like, oh, when there's a tie break, it's this. But then we get to the end, it's like, okay, we're all competitive. We want to win this, but what does that mean? And then, I don't know, we say nice things like, oh, it's not about winning the Big Ten. We just want to for the tournament. Like, true. However, like, it would be cool to be champs, like it's cool to be the championship league. So yeah, I think, for any of us, it's, can we take care of the next match in front of us? We have a match Friday against Purdue, Saturday against Purdue. We take care of those, and then we move on to Indiana, and let the chips fall where they may after that. But if we take care of business, we know we're in a good spot, regardless of Big Ten or whatever that looks like. But going into the tournament, we're going in a good direction.
Yeah.
Well, Brian's going to talk
all those
a
people
little bit.
that say,
He's
I
going
was
to
gonna say,
talk
all
a
those
little
people
bit
that talk
about how it
about-
goes forward.
got it.
I'm sorry, Jen, what was that?
No, I was going to say, all those coaches that say this season doesn't matter, they're lying. It all matters.
Okay, Brian, you're on.
Coaches are good at lying, so it's okay. I'm always, when we watch TV and we always see the backgrounds on television and everybody's on a Zoom call. Jen Greeny, what is that, a toolbox behind you? By the way, is that a toolbox?
Yeah. It's just some sort of decoration, there's no tools in there, but it's a I don't know what it is.
I
I
thought it
got
was
the important coffee maker though, and then the wine bar next to it. So
I
I've
was
got all the
looking at those.
essentials here at the house for quarantine.
Yeah, I just thought you were taking that to work with you, and telling your players it's time to go to work, I thought it was
There we
good.
go. I'm going to
And
start.
Jen,
to
are you at your office, Jen Flynn?
I am. That's my
I have
toaster.
never seen a toaster at an office before.
Yep.
So pretty impressive.
Yeah, we practice in the morning, so I eat my breakfast here.
All right.
What I still don't get it, Jen Flynn, how they're going to pick your conference champion, because there's going to be teams with more games than others. That it's really going to be interesting. Wow.
Yeah,
Because it will make a difference in seeding, perhaps. Speaking
will.
of that, what do you both see? We'll start with Jen Flynn. What do you see for the playoffs? What are you guys looking at now? It's obviously you're most likely going to be in the playoffs. And what do you see there? What with 48 teams and 16 buys, what do you see in the national picture? Any way you want to take that.
I'll answer it like I answer a lot of the questions my team threw at me through quarantine.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yep. Can't wait.
Let's see
Oh, yeah,
we're looking for the magic 8 ball is going to tell us. Like, yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows? I think Jen makes a good point. Like the committee, the selection is just going to be crazy. And in a normal year, they just get hammered for their selections. And so now what are they looking at? And is it win percentage? Is it sets played? If it's sets plays, we are certainly in. Like we're top seed for that. But we're looking ahead as what the schedule looks like. Here's what the days look like, and not so much as opponents. And I think in a year like this, I don't know how Jen's organized their scouting reports, but it's like, let's focus on these hitters. Like, don't even worry about rotations. Let's focus on our side of the net and what can we bring. Let's highlight our strengths and take it to a team instead of dialing it all in with all the numbers and craziness that a normal season has. So for us, it's, can we train for that next day? And it's a condensed tournament, of course, and how is that going to be, and when can we rest, when can we recover, and how do we just get ready for our next opponent?
And Jen Greeny, what do you see for the national picture? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What does the team look at?
Yeah, my first goal is to get out of quarantine.
Yeah.
And then, like, this is just hard. I mean, we've had a couple of stops and starts with, Stanford had to cancel on us, USC had to cancel on us. And that was actually pretty tough. Just that kind of stop it and start of, we think we're going to play and we prepare, and then you don't play. So just right now, I'm just kind of looking at the next week to just try and get everybody back. And you can't just, being off a week, just throw everybody back in right away. You got to, kind of slowly get back in. You want to make sure that you're, not injuring anybody. And so I think just to, like Jen said, look at the days that you can train and get your team better on your side of the court. I think it might end up being a little disadvantage for us this year that we have played the same team back to back, because especially with such a young team, is you really only scout once and then you just make some adjustments kind of that day in between. And we've had a day in between most of the time, and going to the national championships, you're going to be playing back to back and two different teams. So just something, I think, like Jen said, scouting report wise, to try and maybe focus on different things on different days and just really taking care of your side of the court. But we really now haven't looked forward to that too much, just trying to get everybody back and healthy and, as game ready as we can be.
Well, as a person who's coached most of their lives, I coached most of my life. I take my hat off to the two of you this year. Obviously, you're somehow staying focused. I think the 8 ball or a magic wand is a good thing to have right now, but I'm really impressed in how well you've done, and obviously how well you kept your team focused. And both of you talked about the present, and both of you stayed in there. I'm really impressed. But we're going to turn this over to Ruth now.
Thanks to Brian. Now, Mick, I'm not going to go to you again.
Oh,
except
you have to. I have one more question.
Oh, no, you're not getting one more question. All right, ladies, this is my time. This is the most fun, probably show we've ever had. All right, Big Ten, there's only 4 out of 14 women coaching. Pac-12, only 3 out of 12. In the AVCA top 15 poll this week, there are only 4 women out of 15. Now, my question to both of you is, how do we get, 1, more women involved, and 2, why should we have more women involved in women's volleyball? And I'm going to give it to the eldest with the most experience to go first. Not that you haven't had experience, Jen, because you definitely have to finish your game. Okay, Jen.
Is that a compliment? Yeah, I think it's important, and I think we could actually do a whole show just on this, Ruth. So, maybe, you get us back.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ideas that I have out there. And I think, I know both Jen and I are moms as well. And, I think just being creative, whether you have a female assistant that maybe is a mom as well, being creative with time and flexibility, or if you're an administrator hiring females, maybe it's putting daycare costs, or, being able to travel your kids with a nanny, and I know all of that, takes time and effort and can cost some money as well. I thought it was interesting when I was hired here at Washington State, and we had a basketball coach at the time that had worked at a different Pac-12 school when her kids were young. And, that was in her contract that her kids and nanny were able to travel with them. And I think just also being able to pay coaches more, because of all those costs that are associated with it, and having a working mom. My husband works with me, so that's kind of a double-edged thing as well. But thankfully I had parents in the area that were able to help out, but it certainly takes a village. And I think there's a lot of creative ways that we can keep females and especially working moms in the coaching world.
Okay.
So
Sorry to cut you
we could do a
short.
whole segment on it. Yeah.
But we're going to have to do that. Okay, Jen, give us a couple of things that we can do to get more women involved, besides selling the administration on why you need a support system.
Yeah, all the things Jen said, and make sure if you marry well, and they understand your job. That's my husband's home with the kids right now. He never thought he'd be doing that, but he is. So that's been huge. But having that support system administratively, family life, and showing that you have flexibility within your staff, I think that's huge.
Okay. All right, Mick, this is not time for a question. We are out of time. So let's talk a little bit about next week.
Well, next week, and thank you, ladies. Don't run away, though. I'm going to sneak this question in. Really.
Here we go.
Next week, we are going to take an in-depth look at the tournament. We're going to have our top 16 that we're going to try to come up with to give some, I guess, highlight to what the outside world looking in thinks about this. But is it possible, Jen Flynn Oldenburg, that we could see 4 Big Ten teams ranked 1 through 4? If you do the job with the Boilers this weekend, the other people do their job, because Kentucky messed up 2 weeks ago and lost to Florida. Last night, Texas lost to Rice. Big Ten has a real advantage here. Yeah, get that thing going.
My sources say no, Mick. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't see 1
All
through
right,
4.
Ruth, take it away. That's what's happening next week. We'll see what the 8 ball says.
Okay, book your Master Coaches custom virtual clinic today by heading over to our Instagram, click in our bio, click on the virtual clinic link. If you're looking for a fantastic one-day clinic near Abilene, Texas, join us June 5th by registering at AbileneYSA.org. That is Abilene Youth Sports Authority. If you'd like to be on our guest list for our Buzz Reaction After Show, please click on the Instagram account, Want to Be a Guest, and you'll not only receive our updates, your name will be on our guest appearance list. Remember, our weekly Buzz shows are on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. A special shout out to our partners, SNA Sports and Baden Sports, and thanks to our content providers, NFHS, JVA, Coaches Insider, and AVCA. Stay on Facebook Live after John closes our show today and join our Master Coaches Buzz Reaction. It's not only to hear Master Coaches continue the conversation, but also to hear from our guests. Now, let's go to Dr. John Foreman, who is our Buzz and Buzz Reaction digital partner. John?
Thanks, Ruth. And thanks, ladies, for turning up and making this an entertaining show for sure. Coming up on the podcast, which you can get at coachingvb.com, will be part 2 on Sunday of my conversation with David Gill from Vert. Our focus has mainly been on warm-ups, but we also had some conversation in there about concussions and a few other things mixed in as well. I think sleep was in there also. So definitely check that out. First episode is already up. Second one will come on Sunday. So with that, we'll wrap it up and we'll move on to the reaction.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
both
Jen.
guys, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jen. And vice. Thanks, Jen.
And a high
you, guys.
five for the women coaches in women's volleyball.
Thanks, Ruth. Good luck,
Thanks,
Jen.
Ruth. You too, Jen.
Yeah, thanks.
Good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to our Buzz Reaction. And today we have one very special guest coming on in the last 15 minutes as part of our Wanna Be a Guest program, which we'll introduce him later in the show. Now, let's hear from our master coaches as they continue their conversation on today's Buzz Show. All right, guys.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that I'm the only one that switched to Buzz Reaction on my back screen there. You guys are, slipping up, but I was right on top of it.
You are better than us, Bob. We expect no less.
I'm there. I got it.
All right, you got it? I don't think so. All right, who's going first? Brian or Mick?
I would say that they're in the Big West, which I was for 32 years. 9 of the 11, no, I don't even know how many teams there are now. They added 2. 9 or 10 of the coaches are women. Just to let you know, Ruth.
All right.
9 of the 12, 9 of 10, 11, I don't know.
Wow.
Just I wanted you to know that.
I think that's important. I'm going to put that down on my stats too. That's
There you
excellent.
go.
Yeah, you got to get a research assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you love that, huh?
Well, I didn't hear any stats from the ACC or the Big 12 because there's pretty good numbers there.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Sometimes when you got to give those figures, you've got to, I don't say it's embellish, but that the effort is out there working on why women are important on women's volleyball staffs, not just all head coaches, but staffs.
I thought it was interesting. They talked about, putting things in your contract about kids coming to work. I don't want to say too much about it, but, we had a lot of babies at our school. And we had a lot of children from my assistant coaches throughout the time. And we had them in practice. We had the kids in practice, from the point they were really little. We had them in the office. It enhanced the experience. It didn't take away from it.
I would tell you, my wife would have been glad to send all the kids with me. She could have a weekend off.
Our coaches would have taken them.
Yeah.
But I do think that it was important and actually brought our team together, didn't pull them apart.
Well, Vivian Stringer at Iowa, when I was there in '89, her husband was not only employed by the university, but he took care of the kids. And she coached full time, and he had complete control of everything that was going on with the kids. So I think you see some of that, not a lot, but some of that.
Yeah. We had 9 children in my first 9 years at Long Beach from the staff. So it was a lot of kids.
Well, it was easy to see why both of these young women have their programs on the top of the conference. They're quite focused and they're fun to listen to. It was a really enjoyable get together, wasn't it? I enjoyed both coaches immensely. And when they talked, they had something to say. You really got a lot of information from from what they brought to us. And I'm sure that's the way they're direct with their teams like that. So probably why they're doing well. If we had more time, we should have probably looked at the recruiting aspect. And that's one of the things, Ruth, that you usually bring up. Washington State has been very, very focused on international recruits, and they have maybe 6, if I'm not mistaken, players on their team right now internationally. I think we saw Ohio State has 1 or 2, one from Puerto Rico and one from, I forgot,
Slovenia or something, or
Serbia maybe.
Serbia, yeah.
Yeah.
Serbia.
So they're all doing a good job. I think it behooves us. So Brian, you mentioned coaches that you knew that had been players that had become head coaches. One that I just saw working last week was Jill Kramer from TCU. She was put in the Hall of Fame as a player there and then brought back as a head coach. You mentioned the coach at Long Beach, Brian.
Joy McKenzie.
Yeah, Joy. There have been several more coaches that have been very successful as players that are coming back to their universities to coach, which is, I think, a good sign, and it carries on a tradition of winning, and that's really, I think, important also. So it looks like we might be onto something here. It would be interesting. Jen Greeny brought up another point about playing back-to-back that I had a theory about, and I'm interested in what you guys think. But I would pay attention for the tournament to the team on the back-to-back weekends when they play the same team. We talked about coaches making coaches' decisions that allowed to get a split many times. If you lost the first match, you got a chance to get the second match. But for the tournament, I would be interested in paying attention to the teams that always won the first match, especially when they were on the road, because the tournament's going to be on the road. You don't get a second chance in the tournament. So I'd like to know who can get their team ready to go in and win that first night. Florida upset Kentucky that first night. Rice pulled off the win against Texas last night. A lot of splits in the Big Ten, but Minnesota did beat Nebraska at Nebraska when they played there the first night and then lost the second night. There have been several of those kinds of things that we'll want to watch as we go into the tournament. So it should be pretty interesting.
That might be one of the criteria that Mick's going to use next week when we pick the top 6.
Well, I actually might, because I think it makes a difference. I think the way teams prepare, certainly if you get a second crack at somebody and they found a weakness, you can plug that weakness and maybe make a difference the second night. It's certainly good for the teams to learn about people going after certain weaknesses so you can make those stronger when you get to the tournament. But boy, I think there is something to that maybe.
Well, I think it's very difficult. Two good teams, it's very difficult to beat a team twice back to back. I mean, it's easy. You could play home and away, and if you're better than the other team, your chances are better to win. But to play a team a second night back to back, and they're good, and both teams are good. It's tough to stay at that level. The level, if you're 90, you have to play at 90% to beat the other team, and you play at 70% because you can't keep that consistency. You're going to lose the second night.
Hey, that's why we loved it when we played Japan. Japan never made adjustments until the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you had a chance to make your adjustments before you played them again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tell you what was interesting to me in the show was, like Jen Flynn said, they don't know how they're going to pick the champion.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
That seems crazy.
And how about Washington?
Hasn't figured that out yet.
How about Washington State winning if they win the conference without playing Washington and Utah? They could technically win the conference, and the two other best teams they didn't play.
Yeah, well, and Wisconsin's kind of like that, because Wisconsin's 11-1, I think, or 11-0. But Ohio State's played 16 matches. I believe Ohio State has either rescheduled and played the teams that they weren't allowed to play, or many of them up until late. They played 16 matches, more than anybody else in the conference, I think. And yet they could end up not winning the conference championship and not having a shot at those teams. I'd love to see Ohio State and Wisconsin. That hasn't happened. I don't think Ohio State's played Minnesota either. So
But you've
But how
seen
would
them
you
a
like
lot
to
of
be the
the
team?
matches already.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but how would you like to be the team that lost to Wisconsin, and then the other teams haven't played Wisconsin?
Or
You know?
like Purdue had to open the season against Wisconsin at Wisconsin, and
Right.
they're still 9-5 in the conference. They're only two matches down from the most played. And they have a chance now to get Ohio State this next weekend. So they could have basically 4 teams with 2 or 3 losses, and then Purdue and Penn State could be tied in. Purdue and Penn State split, so they could end up being tied also for that 5th spot. So it's pretty interesting. You think the Big Ten can get 6 teams into the tournament?
Well, how do you determine makeups? Who's determining whether you can reschedule?
Yeah, I would think. I was going to ask Jen, tongue in cheek, Jen Greeny, what a heck of a time to get 7 COVID cases just before you play Washington. You're in first place.
Right. Okay, so the Big Ten, Penn State's played 14 matches, Purdue's played 16, Minnesota's played 13, Nebraska's played 14, Ohio State's played 16, and Wisconsin's played 11.
Yeah,
wow.
it almost doesn't seem like it's right to have Wisconsin, unless they just run the table from here on out, and somebody else drops games.
But if you're 20, yeah, but if
20%
Bob,
less games.
yeah, but if you're 20-1 and Wisconsin's 15-0, I don't know. I'd be a little upset if I was 20-1.
Yeah, because those teams are so close to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, anything could have happened.
Yeah.
Well, at the Pac-12 basketball, men's basketball, Oregon was given the conference championship, even though there were 3 other schools that had played a lot more games. I think there was one game in between Oregon and USC, and I forget one other team anyway, but Oregon won. So I read in the paper yesterday that USC says Oregon stole the conference championship. So now we have to play them again in the NCAA tournament. We're going to try to use that as motivation to get back. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on out there, that's interesting for the coaches, interesting for the players. But boy, is the committee going to get a lot of flack. And I can say this in advance because there's nothing they can do that's going to make too many people happy.
Well, they've always been able to use RPI, and that's out the window.
Yeah.
So what saves volleyball, though, is basketball's already set the precedent. It's good to go after those guys. Follow those guys. Let them take the heat. Let them set precedent. And the committee, whatever happened in basketball is what's going to happen in volleyball.
Okay, so Pac-12, UCLA played 17 matches, Utah 16, Oregon 14, Washington 16, and Washington State 12.
Yeah. You got similar situation. Washington State and Wisconsin are kind of in the same.
Who knows?
Yeah. But we do know that Pac-12 will use percentage, I believe. They're using it for basketball, and I think
That's what they use,
right
basketball.
through. So they will use percentage. And so did we understand that Jen Greeny said they wouldn't be able to play Utah this weekend, or she was hoping to play Utah?
He was hoping to play Utah this weekend.
Okay.
If everybody gets cleared.
Yeah, those are big matches because Utah has lost their left side, so they've gone down to 4th, I think, in the conference. My view is that Pac-10 is probably going to get 5, Big Ten is probably going to get 6. But boy, if somebody falters here at the end of the conference, it will be interesting. I don't think that Washington State can afford to lose to Utah, but Utah's tough, and they'll have their typical. I think Washington State plays more 5-game matches than anybody in the country. They just seem to always be in a 5-set match, especially late in the season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Bob, are you? Do you know about the makeups? Do you know? Oh, no, I mean, the number of days, I'm sorry. Washington State said they were in the 10th, no, yeah, the 10th day.
It's 7 kids.
How many days do they have to wait, Bob?
Now it's 10 days. It
So this
was
is
14.
their last day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is their last day. And then there's a protocol to come back to play after that to make sure that the athlete doesn't have any heart issues or anything like that.
So, yeah, so
they
there'll be
could
11.
be ready by Friday. It's conceivable for them.
So
to
they
do
could
it.
practice maybe tomorrow?
Yeah, they're probably going to have a half practice, light practice for those athletes. Everybody else is probably practicing. And then they probably can, get a serve and pass on Friday.
They play Friday, I think, don't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can serve and pass before they play.
Yeah, that's
And there's no way every player is going to be cleared. There's not a chance. They're in trouble. If they play that game, they're in trouble. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, guys, we're ready for our next guest. Let's bring our guest today to join us in our new format, which allows our guest to be on the Buzz Reaction Show for 10 minutes after Master Coaches conversation. Each guest has a chance to ask our Master Coaches a question they've always wanted to ask or just wanted an opinion or topic or situation. Our guest today is Mike Rumbaugh, head men's coach at St. Francis University, going into his 23rd season and competes in the EIVA conference in 2020 with a highlight 3-2 win over number 7 Stanford. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right.
Very honored to be with all you guys.
Good to see you, Rummy.
All
Yeah.
right. Before you get to ask your questions, because you're by yourself, we would love to know what you think about Master Coaches Weekly Buzz, because guess what? Bob told me you've watched this a few times.
Yeah, very much enjoy watching you guys. It's not live. Usually I get to go home and watch it later at night, but I love hearing the comments you guys make, and I respect a lot of the things you guys say. But I also think it's a good idea for everybody to watch the other podcasts and webcasts that are out there too, and hear from everybody. But I love hearing what you guys have to say.
Wow. Okay. So now you're pretty special. Patty Dodd was on last week, and you guys get to ask a lot of questions. So just go for it. You get any kind of questions you want. You can even ask Bob, and he's required to answer.
Not
Yeah.
truthfully, though.
Yeah, I guess Buzz Reaction, like you guys were talking about, I cannot believe like the Big Ten you're saying doesn't know what they're going to be doing for the playoffs. I actually
That's
thought
crazy.
on the men's side, I thought we did a really good job, especially EIVA, talking about scheduling and getting 20 matches for all the conference teams and realizing that we're going to miss games here and there, and you're not going to have your best players sometimes. And we decided we're doing a winning percentage, but we know the rules we're playing by, so we know how to make the playoffs. And I just not knowing the rules you're going to play by just blow my mind that way. And I actually thought it was kind of interesting EIVA wise. Every team has missed 1 weekend to play after this weekend. NJT is going to miss Charleston. Charleston had some positives, and they're going to miss out. So at the end, if we keep going, I think everybody's going to have the equal amount of games played, and we can figure out what we're doing for the playoffs. But I also like the fact that we decided to take everybody to the playoffs for once. So at the end of the year, you can fight it out. And if you didn't have your best guy in a match, hopefully you have your best guy at the end. But we'll see how the end plays out if anybody has to check out because of COVID, or if we go full strength at the end. So I'd be kind of curious to see too.
Wow.
But I was going to bring up, I actually also watched Mick on the talking about the 48 to 64 teams. I think you have to go 64 now with all the controversy you're going to have. So I think that is a good argument to fight for. I kind of wanted to talk about women's basketball had the big controversy with men's basketball with the weight room and the food. Volleyball still seem like they're behind the world basketballs. And when you look at men's volleyball, women's volleyball, or even behind the world, the women's basketball world. I've never seen a weight room in a playoff situation. But I would like to hear like the equality coming down the list. Where do you think this is going to affect the rest of the NCAA now that women's basketball spoke out against men's basketball?
Okay. Bob, Brian, Nick.
Do you think
Well-
championships will be more equal?
Yeah, here's two things, and this isn't going to be very popular. Okay, so women's basketball is getting screwed on this deal, just no question. The other side of it, women's basketball has had everything they could have ever wanted for the last 15 years, and it's hard for a lot of people to say, tough luck. You know, you got a tournament, you got all your teams in, grin and bear it. On the other hand, there's not any of us that think it's fair that it's not equal, you know, in facilities and that sort of thing. But we've heard a lot of howling from women's basketball when women's volleyball doesn't have a counterpart yet. That's bringing in a lot of dollars that gets them a lot of things that other sports don't get. So there's two sides to the story. The right answer is that, yeah, there should have been equality. The bigger one to me is not the weight room. The bigger one is the testing, the quality testing for the men's tournament, and the not quality testing for the women's tournament is a health issue that I think somebody should be spanked for. That's just wrong. The weight room, I've seen situations where people don't understand what people need. That's up to the women's basketball committee to make sure the weight room was right. I don't know if they tried and they just got rebuffed or what. We don't have all the answers for that, but that's my opinion. That's just my opinion. And, you know, I just throw it out there.
Brian, Mick, and Brian, Bob.
Well, there's,
Mike,
Well-
while they're thinking, I just want to know one other thing. Are you ever going to let Bertucci win a game? I mean, it's been almost
Come
a
on.
whole season now.
He's our last weekend, and I need those wins too. So no, I am not. And my kids don't get to win, sorry, or shoot some ladders or any of those games either.
yeah.
Hey, Mike, though, Bob has to put up with us if he doesn't get a win. Trust me.
I don't know what's worse.
We're trying, Bob. We're doing everything we can to help you here. Come on.
Yeah, we're very helpful.
Brian, I interrupted you, so go ahead.
It's yours was better anyway. You know, we have to, in this whole thing about equality, we need to talk about what can be equal. I mean, you know, to discriminate against any sport is wrong. They're all treated a certain way. The athletes should all, I used to tell my athletes, they're not less important than any other athlete or any other student, but they're also not more important than any other athlete or any other student. They're just, you know, they're just there. And my answer is education, opportunities. There's so many beautiful opportunities for an athlete going through college. And I think we're a little spoiled by those opportunities. You know, if I was the coach going and they didn't give me a weight room, I could have cared less. You know, all right, we'll make do. We'll find a way to lift or whatever. But there are other things that those are the unfair parts. But when we're starting to talk about a men's basketball that can generate $1 billion from CBS, you know, to broadcast the games, these contracts they're getting and bringing in that kind of money, you know, there's some plus to that because that spreads out to everybody. That spreads out to other sports. So I don't want to hurt the opportunities for them to bring in money to the university too. So I think it's fight for equality where it is truly unfair, but understand too that if somebody, you know, the basketball coach when I coached made more money than I did. He also brought in more money to the school. You know, that's the way it was, and I'm okay with that. And I think that we lose perspective of our importance sometimes. That's all. And we lose perspective of what is important and who is bringing in the cash. That's it.
All right, Bob.
Well, I kind of will play off what Brian's saying and just put a little different twist to it or a little addition to it. You know, I really think, you know, the women's basketball crying about it not being equal to men's basketball. It's not equal. It's just never going to be equal. All right. That doesn't mean you don't give the opportunity to women. I'm not saying that. We've gotten past the Title IX thing. We can't compare. I mean, what if men's volleyball started saying, hey, we don't have what women's volleyball is? That would be the worst thing that could happen right now to men's volleyball. We don't want to say that. We don't want to do that, because then we'll lose men's volleyball programs. So don't try to be equal, all right, but try to be fair at what's going on. We want to grow the sport, and we want to grow the opportunities for male and female athletes. That should be the main thing. And like Brian's saying, it's just not equal. If you're getting, X millions or billions of dollars in one area, and the other areas, barely getting enough people to show up to the game to pay the cost of opening up the arena, it's not equal. All right.
So should we have more men's teams in the men's championship?
Well, I think we have more men's teams right now in the men's championship than we've had in the past.
Well, my understanding was they were going to cut it back to 4.
Well, there's some talk about that, but that's not going to happen, because the numbers are showing that it should be increased, not decreased. And it has nothing to do with comparing it to the women's game. It's just comparing it to the men's game itself.
It's just
So
straight up NCAA policy. Yeah.
As Terry Pettit was on Twitter suggesting that there's no reason for the women's tournament to be cut to 48, it should be 64, because women's basketball and men's basketball have shown it can happen, and we have a place that can accommodate it. Would you support the committee going back to the NC2A and saying we want to add another 16 teams to the tournament?
Hey, Mike, let Mike give his
Yeah, I
comment.
was going to say,
Actually, I'm on two sides on that. One is, you knew you were playing for 48, so don't change the rules in the middle of the season. But on the other hand, I also look at it and say, there's gonna be a lot of teams that didn't get to cross over and play each other, that I think putting the extra teams in and let them fight it out is gonna be kind of fair. I think the reaction would be, I'm so glad I made it in. But if they say the 48, I understood what the playing rules were.
Yeah.
Well, the fairness that I was talking about is the NCAA rule is percentage of teams that participate, meaning, that are sponsored by the school. And if there's about 330 Division I women's teams, then 64 would be appropriate, because of the numbers, because of opportunity, and that's their formula. So that it should be 64. There's no reason to cut it to 48. That's my feeling. But I do agree
Sorry
with
to
you.
interrupt here. We're getting close on time, and we want Mike to give us a few words that he'd
Oh,
like to
okay.
share with our viewers on why we should be lifelong learners.
We should be lifelong learners because the game is always changing. And I've been doing this since the 80s also, and it's kind of morphed. I see things come through the game, and 20 years later, somebody thinks it's a brand new idea, and it wasn't. So I actually think that you need to keep learning, and you need to morph with the game, and you got to stay ahead of the game. And one thing I really love about the men's side of the game is I think we are more we're more open to change at the beginning, and we kind of set the new trends. And it trickles down to the college game, women's college game, and then down to the club later on. I kind of lost my train of thought, my phone ringing there, but I like the lifelong learning because I think you have to be able to adapt and change as time goes by. The other thing I actually think that you got to do as learners is everybody, and I see this in young coaches especially, they learn something and they want to tell it, but they don't understand the why. And they say, hey, I saw Mick do this last week. I really like what he did. I want to have my blockers do what Mick taught, what Mick said. And you say, why? And they're like, oh, Mick did it. And I think that's a really bad reason to do anything until you ask Mick, like, why are you doing it? And then Mick explains something to us. And you say, oh, my kids can do that. Yeah, but maybe Mick says that you're going to jump off of one leg and you have to be able to squat 2.5 times your body weight. And I don't have a kid that can squat that much weight. I'm never going to jump off one leg. But I think we need to learn why instead of just hear it said once and then move on and go with it. So even
Okay,
when you guys
that's-
do your master coach, you got to research it and see like what's going on.
All right. Well, we're out of time. And thanks, Mike, for joining us
Thanks,
on
Mike.
today's Buzz Reaction. We wish you great success as you move safely into your final regular season matches and successes for postseason play. And take it easy on Bob.
Not
All
too
right.
much success, just a
All
little
right.
bit of success.
And Mike, check that beeping. I don't know if your office is bugged or not, but you better make sure the administrator doesn't have your office bugged there. And then
And take it easy. Take it easy on Bob.
All right.
All
Book
right.
your Master Coaches custom virtual clinic today by heading over to our Instagram. Click on our bio and click to virtual clinic link. If you are looking for a fantastic one-day clinic in Abilene, Texas, join us June 5th by registering at AbileneYSA.org. That's Abilene Youth Sports Authority. For those viewers that want to be on our Buzz Reaction guest list, jump over to VB Master Coaches Instagram, go to the bio and click on the sign up to be a guest list. For those coaches that are interested in our consulting services, please email from our link on our VB Master Coaches Instagram. Be sure to tell your friends about our weekly news show. And thanks for joining us today, and see you next week on The Buzz.